At 15 years old in Kingston, Jamaica, David Mullings graduated from high school and laid out a 15-year plan for his life, broken into 5-year blocks written down. That kind of clarity produces a specific type of person, the type who negotiates YouTube's first ever Caribbean media partnership, serves as Caribbean outreach coordinator on Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, gets Barack Obama to sign a happy 50th independence card for Jamaica, failed at multiple ventures, loses 3 years to the pandemic, and keeps building anyway. 6 years in the making, Blue Mahoe Capital became the first US-based company in history to receive SEC qualification to raise capital specifically for Caribbean investment. Ticket symbol IRE, reserved for Nasdaq. David Mullings has been saying for years that Jamaica will become the Singapore of the Western Hemisphere. He's not waiting for someone else to make that happen. This is that story. Every founder has a story. These ones just happen to be Caribbean. This is the Foundpreneur Podcast, where we tell those stories properly. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Stephen Stanbury, and every week on this podcast, I sit down with Caribbean and diaspora founders building businesses the world hasn't discovered yet. Today's guest is David P.A. Mullings, founder, chairman, and CEO of Blue Mahoe Capital, the first US-based company to receive SEC qualification to raise capital for Caribbean investment. David, welcome to the Foundpreneur Podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Steve. We're really proud of what you've started to build here and looking forward to learning about so many more Caribbean entrepreneurs and what they have been doing.
Awesome. Before I get into it, I have to ask this question. Did I nail the intro? I got everything correct. I have to check to make sure that I did my due diligence, but I want to ensure that I have everything correct.
So I was Caribbean Outreach Coordinator for Florida for Hillary's campaign. And yes, the ticker symbol is IRA that we reserved for the Nasdaq. So you nailed everything you spoke about. It's interesting what you left out. And of course, the last part is that it was a 15-year plan, brought into blocks of 5 years, knowing what I'd do after age 50 as well. So this was 15 to 30. I knew what I would do after 50.
Let's get into my first question. So you started planning your life at 15 years old in Jamaica. You broke this into 5-year blocks, and most adults never do that, right? So take me back to that moment. Where did that kind of thinking come from in a 15-year-old boy in Kingston?
Well, as you can tell, I wasn't an ordinary 15-year-old boy. In my case, it really came from Mom and Dad, right? Dad, Dr. Anthony Mullings, was a lecturer at University of the West Indies in med school. Mom was a nurse who went to school in the UK for her nursing degree, worked in New York and then Miami. And they raised me a certain way. So at age 8, for example, I grew up in Anglican church, and Dad made sure that my brother and I could go and speak on Youth Sunday if needed, right? We're going to read one of the lessons, first or second lesson. Yeah. Eventually, we had to actually go and do the sermon. So what Dad did was clip a lavalier mic to us. And then he would have us just open the Bible and read a verse, or have us read a JFK speech, or a Michael Manley speech, or a Martin Luther King Jr. speech. He would record it and play it back to us. He wants to make sure that we're not saying that we're going to be great public speakers. And I remember asking Dad why. And he says, well, if you're going to be the leaders of people, you need to be able to be good at public speaking. So it was at age 8 that Dad started training us for that, because this was something he had done, right? He had been on campus. He had served in student leadership roles. Now he was in professional leadership roles. So it started with them, right? The parents set the foundation. They set the level of expectations. So I grew up always giving. We go and volunteer at children's homes, whether I say Monica's Children's Home in Chapelton or National Children's Home right there down the road from home in Kingston. And so we were raised to give back, to want to do something, not simply sit and complain. And that meant that when the time came and I was finishing high school, Mom and Dad asked me, what do you want to do when you grow up? Now, we know that question is more related to careers. And I said, that's easy. I want to be a positive role model for young people around the world, especially young males in Jamaica. Oh, that was a reaction. Oh, man, we didn't expect that. But we raise it, that means you have a plan. And I said, yes, I have a plan. I have 4 options. And we went through the options. So that was how my life worked. I had a clear vision because mom and dad put a vision into my head and made me believe that it was possible, right? The role models they gave me allowed
Yeah.
me to believe that it was possible, whether it's the Mandelas, the Manleys, the JFKs. And nowadays you would have the Barack Obamas. Why not me? That's how my parents raised me. And then I need to study them. Success leaves clues. So I went and studied those people. What did they do in order to get into that position where they could help many people? It was never just
Yeah.
about helping themselves.
Awesome. Like, I love that story. I mean, in my case, my mother didn't let me read the speeches, but she recorded me reading and played it back to me, and then pointed out my mistakes or asked me to point out my mistakes so that I could correct them. So it's similar things, and that's a good approach for us to raise our children.
Love it.
So before I go further, which one of the speeches that you reviewed was your favorite?
Well, so I genuinely loved JFK's, the one everybody knows, where it talks about ask not what you can do for yourself, ask what you can do for your country. For me, that was
Yeah.
a very special speech. I did study a number of Lee Kuan Yew speeches as well, and I think he has a number of things when he talks about what Singapore could be, right? He needed to convince
Yes.
people that this was possible. But that specific speech and that line, ask not what you can do for yourself, but what you can do for your country, that has always resonated with me. Because Jamaica's national pledge, which we grew up saying at school every day, pretty much,
Yeah.
right, literally talked about that. And our national pledge didn't talk about just helping Jamaica. It talked about the entire humankind. We must help everyone. And I took the pledge seriously. I took the pledge more serious, to be honest, than our national anthem. That pledge, for me,
Yes, the pledge,
really
yeah.
means a lot, yeah.
So you graduated from the University of Miami at 19. You completed
Yes.
your MBA at 22, one of the youngest. You played competitive football. I mean, I could go on. You worked on presidential campaign. You toured with
Rally
Sean
driving.
Paul.
Don't
Yes,
forget
rally
that.
driving.
Rally driving.
Yeah, you described those years between that and Blue Mahoe as a period of starting multiple ventures and failing a number of them. So I want to sit with that, right? What did those failures actually feel like, and what did they teach you that success couldn't have?
Well, so it's funny enough because I have been taught that success comes from experience. Experience comes from failure.
Failure.
Thankfully, I did sports. So team sports especially taught me how to fail well. So I didn't have to win every single football match for us to win the season. I didn't have to score every single shot that I took. I can take 10 shots and I could score 2 goals. I could still win, right? We could lose the game, but then we could win ultimately over the season enough games. So it taught me that I didn't have to win everything, and I was willing to lose provided I actually learned something and I was still in the game, right? Yeah, you have to be careful that failure is not fatal. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
If you take all the money, put it in the business, try and fail, and then it's dead and it cannot continue, that's fatal. I'm going to learn from it, but now I'm going to take the 9-to-5 job. I'm going to go back in, rebuild my resources, and then go from there. Failing taught me that I built skills and I could then use those skills to land a job, whether it's a consulting job or go back into the 9-to-5 world. And I could always start over. And then ultimately, nobody even remembers unless I talk about it. Everybody's so busy doing their own thing. So they don't care. In the moment, we feel pain and we're worried, oh man, the person see me just shoot and miss, or they see me do this, or they saw me try this business and fail, and we get so worried about it. When you fail 2 or 3 times, you realize that, oh, I can brush this off. I can move forward and do it. And then when you get to study successful entrepreneurs, you realize, oh, wow, somebody like Henry Ford failed in 2 car companies. And then later in life, he started what became Ford Motor Company. The inventor of WD-40 failed 39 times. Water displacement 40th formula. It was the 40th version. He failed 39 times. Who am I to complain about failing once, twice, 3 times? I need to persevere. So that's what it taught me, that failure is not fatal provided you can stay in the game.
So you and your brother, Robert, launched Random Media in 2001. So your first company together, and that eventually became Real Vibes, which became YouTube's first ever Caribbean media partner in 2008. That was a landmark moment for Caribbean content, but despite the win, the money still wasn't flowing back into the Caribbean the way it should. Is that experience part of what eventually pushed you to creating Blue Mahoe?
Yes, it definitely pushed me to do this because one of the lessons I got from that, one of the most important ones, I should say, because we got
Yeah.
multiple lessons. But one of the biggest lessons that the Caribbean really suffers from a perception problem. So we in the Caribbean understand how big our culture is and the impact that we have made. The rest of the world, who actually has the money to deploy and help us scale, does not see us that way. They have this resort distort, right? They think of the Caribbean as a place of sun, sea, and sand,
Yes.
some other S's. And so I wanted to change that perception because I saw up front the opportunities, but we were missing the capital that needed to come in there and support our entrepreneurs, support our ecosystem. And instead of asking somebody else, and I don't like convincing somebody to see value. I believe that you should just get it. So I just want to go with the coalition of the willing. Do you get it? Let's go. Well, guess what? I wish that me, the young version of me, had an older version of me to go and talk to and ask to write that check that would be patient to support something like Real Vibes back then, because we would be in a much better position today from a Caribbean standpoint in supporting our culture and bringing money back from music, from film, from entertainment. So instead of complaining though and wallowing in self-pity, I will create the person that other people who have big ambitions need. I will be that patient investor. I will bring that capital. I will open those doors. I will open my network. I will share my mistakes without feeling bad. Hey guys, don't worry. I have also failed. Here's what I learned. Don't make these mistakes. Go and make new ones. So yes, it was instrumental in shaping the idea behind Blue Mahoe Capital and the parent company, Blue Mahoe Holdings.
Yeah. So I'm glad you mentioned failure because that goes into my next question. But before I dive into that, over the last, I would say 2 years, I've coached founders, solopreneurs on LinkedIn how to use storytelling in their content, right? So one of the biggest things is being open, or the biggest challenges is being open. So you have been very open about the fact that you started multiple ventures and failed at a number of them. I want to go into that specifically because, Caribbean founders rarely talk about failure publicly. So take me back to one specific failure. What happened? What did you get wrong? And what is the one thing that Caribbean founders listening or watching right now can take from that experience and implement immediately?
I love this question. This one is good. So our culture in particular does not like failure, right? We wanted to get 100 on the exam, not 95, not 80. And that's not a good thing. You need to allow people to fail. And as my dad said, that you learn to walk by getting up and falling and getting up and falling and then getting it done. That's the same way that life tends to work. Somebody can't just hold your hand and teach you to walk. Somebody cannot hold the bicycle and teach you to ride. Some point they need to let it go and you're going to go and you're going to fall and skin your knee and get up again. So we should encourage failure provided they learn from it. So when we move now, it's small communities, small islands. When you fail, people laugh at you, point at you, and then you're now shunned and you have that reputation. The United States is the opposite. They encourage failure. They support startup entrepreneurs who have had multiple failures. And that's what has allowed me to shake off this Caribbean problem of not talking about failure and wanting to guard yourself. No, we are open because we can learn from each other when we're honest and transparent. In terms of one example of failure, the one I love to talk about the most is with Real Vibes. Right, we built this website now. RealVibes.net grew to be the largest website for Caribbean music videos on the web. We want to do marketing and get promotion out there. I have an MBA in marketing and international business. My brother has a little Honda Civic. So Honda Civic hatchback, a DX, it's a 96. We lower the car, rims, turbocharger, we put it on, swap the engine, all that stuff. We get a sponsor for it, carbon fiber hood, we brand the car for Real Vibes. It goes through all these events, stages, and so on. And then we now hear that Too Fast, Too Furious is going to be filming in South Florida. Paul Walker, Ludacris, and these guys.
Yeah.
And that John Singleton is going to be coming to a specific place. So the car shops have these flyers that say, bring your car to here to try and get into the movie. So we show up with our branded car. John Singleton speaks to us, love the car, wants to get it in the movie. But they're going to have to take off the branding. We say, but that don't make no sense. That's the whole point of a branded vehicle.
Branded, yeah.
And we say, well, if you leave the branding on, we can't put you in the movie. And they say, well, That's fine, but you can't come to South Florida and shoot a movie and don't have Jamaicans in there. So we won't be the movie. So he added us as extras. So the opening scene of Too Fast, Too Furious, you'll see me in a red and white shirt with a cap to the side. And we got to spend 7 days on set, 8 hours a day, shooting in Miami, downtown Miami, talking to people like Paul Walker and Ludacris. But we asked for one thing. We say, hey, John, the car is not in there, but we would love to do some behind-the-scenes photos of the film, and then you give us permission to release them to help build some hype for Too Fast, Too Furious, and we would want to put it on the website. No problem. So we take 117 photos behind the scenes, all the cars. So this is the Skyline R34, the pink Honda 2000, the brown Supra, and of course the red RX-7. And then I reached out to IGN.com. So IGN was one of the biggest men's websites at the time, still one of the biggest. And I had known the movie editor because I had a Hong Kong films collection. My first ever website was myhongkongfilms.com. I used to review Kung Fu movies, Jet Li, Jackie Chan, and so on. And I would send him some stuff, and we got to know each other. So I said, hey, Spencer, I have exclusive behind-the-scenes photos from Too Fast, Too Furious. I will send them to you. I created a folder, a photo gallery on the website, but I'll send them to you, write an article. So he interviewed me and did an article about being on the set of Too Fast, Too Furious. They put 3 pictures. And he said, we're going to link to your website and send the traffic to you to see the rest of the folder. We said, rotted, we're boss. We're going to get a ton of visibility. We're going to get users. We're going to get visitors. We're going to be able to sell some ads. Now we can show people that the traffic gone up, and this is real. You should advertise. Let's call the various companies that want to get the Caribbean people to advertise. And we made sure that when you go to the album, you probably look at 3 pictures and it sends it to a Sean Paul music video. Then it goes back to the album. We want to use the traffic to then get them to stay and watch videos. Yeah. Why? The first month after the article busting, when I say we feel good, we are paying for fixed bandwidth. So we have a set amount of bandwidth per month. I think it was like 100 gigabytes or something. And then above that, we paid 75 cents per gigabyte over. I mean, this could be crazy. First month, shut. Say, yeah, man, look at the traffic. Oh, we ran out of traffic, and they billed my brother's American Express credit card for $4,000. One time. And that was in June or so. I was like, ratted. All right, well, that's good. We show that we can get the traffic gone up to all 500,000 users. July comes. Boom, traffic still going, people watching the videos. $6,000 bill went straight to his credit card. And we said, okay, that's $10,000 now gone out of the account. We don't bring in $10,000 in revenue yet. And we're still not getting people to advertise it. Uh-oh. Let's see what happens in August. The 3rd of August, they call us. I never forgot. We're in our 2-bedroom apartment in Pembroke Pines. Hi, Mr. Mullings. This is so-and-so with your server. We would like to let you know that your traffic has already hit the maximum. What would you like to do? And my brother said, plug it out. Plug the server out the wall. And the person says, wow, do you know what's going to happen? He says, yes, I won't get a $10,000 bill at the end of the month. And we plugged out the server and shut down the website for 6 months. So the lesson from that is we thought visibility would transform the business into credibility and then profitability, right? A lot of people think, oh, all I need to do is get on TV. I just need to get on Shark Tank. I just need to run some ads. Guess what? If it's not ready, you're going to scale losing money. You need to focus on bringing in money as soon as possible. And we tend to think that getting on certain things gets us credibility, and then the people who said no or were ignoring us will then write a check. And I promise you, it don't always work that way, and you need to be very careful about trying to grow too fast. And I've seen that example in private equity where somebody says, I just want to get my product into Walmart. Can you fulfill a Walmart order? Because that Walmart order might actually bankrupt you. Walmart is not paying you for 60 days. Can you survive during that time? So that was the biggest lesson for us. But it was a fun lesson.
Yeah. I can see that it was a fun lesson. All right. So Blue Mahoe Capital, you launched this in 2019.
Well, the predecessor to it was launched in 2019.
But the real turning point came this year, right?
Well, this year. That wasn't this year. But yeah. This is year? Oh no, I met Mike many years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, the biggest turning point it would be November. Well, I would say it's actually 2018 when I started with Joe Matalan in that
Okay.
summer was the
Yeah.
first turning point, and then I sat with Mike November 2019, June.
Regarding the meeting, let's focus on that meeting. Yeah. So what happened in that meeting that changed the trajectory of what you're building?
Boy, so
I
I'm going to
know
go
you
and
don't want to
find...
give, yeah, don't want
Oh,
you to
no,
give too
no,
much
no.
details.
No, I can give details. I've talked about it
Yeah.
before. Mike is very open. Right? So, well, I'm going to tell you what Mike told me and why we are so open. But I'm going to have a picture that has the exact date because Mike signed the document. It was the first time that we had a one-on-one meeting together. And so I'm going to tell you the exact date because I'm looking at the photo right here. So this is June 11, 2019.
2019.
June 11, 2019 is when I did a meeting with Mike at NCB's headquarters at the atrium. And
Yeah.
the reason that, and I need to give you the context. Why would you, first of all, how you can get this meeting? Right? And everybody going to say, oh, you have links and so on. And what happened? How did I get the meeting? So the context was that before that, my dad is a doctor in Jamaica and he was a private client with NCB. And I was working at Jamaica National at the time. I was on the product development team, designing mortgage investment products, savings products, and in charge of youth marketing. Dad was invited to a private event at Devon House where Mike was going to be talking about his Portland, India fund. And Dad says, hey, I need you to come with me on a +1 so you can translate all his investing stuff. So by this point, I'd worked in private. I'd been studying Warren Buffett. I go with Dad and we get there early. And this is the most important part that people need to understand how I didn't have the contact before, right? We could get in the room. Dad gets there early and then promptly sits in the back row. There's nobody in the place yet, And Dad sits in the last row. And I just stopped and I said, Dad, I'm going to ask you this. When you are lecturing at UA, if a student comes in early and they sit in the back row, what do you think about that student? I'm saying, oh, they're not here to learn. And I just stop and look at him. So he just get up same time and say, okay. Where you want to sit? I said, Dad, we're going to sit as close to the audience, to Mike, the panel as possible, but not in the reserved seats. And I need to be close to the mic because I'm going to ask a question. So we're looking around. All right, great. First row is reserved. Second row is not reserved. Boom. Go in the second row. Dad sits exactly in the first seat. And I stop and look at him again. And I said, Dad, why would he sit in the first seat if nobody is here? When other people come after us, they're going to have to walk past us to go down the row. They're going to step on our toes. They're going to bump our knees. Why you want that? And I'm saying, well, obviously you have a plan. Just tell me where you want to sit. And I said, Dad, I want to sit directly in front of Michael Leachin. So when his head is at rest, he's looking at us. And so we look at the name cards and we move down, and boom, sit exactly where Mike is going to be. And I'm saying, man, you really have a plan? I say, yeah. Mike is now doing his presentation and he wants to talk about the 5, at the time, principles of wealth creation. And he's looking around, oh, you, sir, what is your name? And he says, oh, I'm Dr. Anthony Mullings. Okay, Dr. Mullings, have we ever met before? No. Oh, I didn't set you up. No. All right, great. I need to think of a wealthy person who built their wealth. They didn't inherit it. They didn't steal it. They didn't win it. Do you have somebody in mind? Don't tell me who it is. Now I'm going to tell you 5 things about that person. And he went through a mic, said, am I right? Am I right? Oh, look at that. Thank you, Dr. Mullings. All right, so Q&A time coming up, and I said, Dad, I need to ask a question. So I'm the first one at the mic. And I said, Mr. Leachin, thank you very much for the presentation. This sounds a lot like Warren Buffett's approach to investing in Berkshire. I said, but you're doing it in India. And the man's like, oh, you know Warren Buffett and Berkshire? And we start going back and forth about where the similarities are, and great.
Yeah.
We sit back down. And then after the event, Mike comes over to tell Dad, thank you for participating. Is there anything else I can help you with? And thank you, David, for that question that I asked. And then Dad said, oh, well, I am this age with this net worth. I want to be this age retired with this net worth. How can I do that in that amount of time? And Mike got to talk to him. So I offered to Mike, hey, can people in the U.S. invest in your Portland India fund? And he says, yes. And I said, I would like to work with you at no cost to help get people to invest in it. And then he put me in touch with Robert Almeida and his personal assistant, his executive assistant. And that's how I got connected to Mike. Later on, I'm at an event again in Jamaica, and this is the Grace Kennedy annual lecture series. I want to get Douglas Arain to invest in Real Vibes. So I leave my job early at Jane, go down to the hotel in New Kingston, and I go and sit in there. I got there a little late. I sit in the first row that's empty, and I move 2 seats down. So I'm in the 3rd seat in case anybody come late. They're not going to walk past me and bump my knees. I am there to talk to Douglas Arain. I go ask a question. And there's a lecture about the importance of Jamaican culture. And I say, yeah, man, culture, Real Vibes. You got to write a check today, Put your money where your mouth is. That's what I'm saying in my head. As I'm sitting there, somebody comes and sits down beside me. Who is it? It's Aubin Hill. had just left NCB, got a nice period, and he sits down right beside me at the lecture. And I say, oh gosh, everybody's probably asking this man for money. I am not going to do what everybody does. I'm not going to ask him for no money. Oh, good to meet you. No problem. We just focus. And then we start bantering about comments that are being made and the presentation. And I say, oh, by the way, sorry, I need to go and ask a question. So I go up now. I'm the third person asking a question. And you see that pattern of always asking a question in public. Go where the people you want to meet are and ask a question. I said, Mr. Rain, this is what you said in your presentation about the importance of our culture. My brother and I have built the largest website for Caribbean music videos on the web, and we want to become the Caribbean MTV of the world. What would it take for you to invest $10,000 in our startup? Thank you for that question, David. Come and see me afterwards. And I go back and sit down, and Aubin Hill turns around with his business card and says, David, we need to talk. He then invites me to Gmail when Gmail is only 10 invitations. Aubin Hill sent me the first email I ever got in Gmail. Is Aubin invite me to Gmail. So now I get Aubin's contact and we're staying in touch. Finally, Michael Leachin, I want to get this thing done. Blue Mahoe, the vehicle we create is running out of money. Because somebody has made a commitment and they've now reneged on the commitment. Standard for startups and business. And I was at the point where I just want to give up. And I remember I was here in Orlando with my wife. And my wife said, David, I can't keep doing this. We have babies now. And I can't deal with the ups and downs. 1 month great, next month not great. Promise me that if you don't raise the money you need by August, you're going to get a regular 9-to-5 job. I'm going to say, oh gosh, man, and that's Friday. So Saturday morning I decide I need to clear my head. I'm driving now to mom and dad in West Palm Beach. So I drive from Orlando, jump on the highway, and I drive in 441. I want pure green around me and just quiet. I don't want to be on the toll road. And I decide, you know what? I'm going to make the one call I've never, ever wanted to make. I'm going to call and ask for a meeting with Michael Leachin and ask for help. I don't want that. I wanted to learn from him. I wanted to make him proud. I didn't want to ask him for anything else. Just ask about how did you do it, and I learned. And I'm asking him for his contacts. I definitely not asking him for money. Everybody asks rich people for money. I don't want to be that person. So at 10:10 a.m., I message Aubin Hill. And I say, Aubin, I have a huge favor to ask you. No, I wouldn't ask unless under pressure. Catherine say, oh, I have to get a job by the end of the summer if I don't get this thing to work. I need a meeting with Michael. And Aubin called me and said, what would you meet about? And I told him what I'd meet about. He said, okay, that's interesting. I'm about to walk into his office. Let me speak to him and get back to you. He then gets back to me around 2 o'clock that afternoon and said, David, Mike can meet with you next week, Tuesday, at this time, right, 9 a.m. for 1 hour. Can you be in Jamaica? I said, I'm booking a ticket on Sunday, tomorrow to fly down. And I had enough money to book a one-way ticket. Right, mom and dad have the house in Jamaica. I had enough money in my account to book a one-way ticket and go to Jamaica. And I said, Dad, if this don't work, you guys have to send me the money to buy another ticket. Man. When I say we pray the night before we're going to meet with Mike, I pray the morning when I go in. Go in there, it's just me and him, nobody else. And I explain the vision of Blue Mahoe. And that's when Mike started laying out, well, why? Great, this, and he says, well, you are exactly 30 years younger than me. He's January 3rd, 1951. I am January 12th, 1981. And he says, I am going to help you. I said, I don't understand. And he said, well, what do you need from me? And I said, well, the simplest thing, I could do an interview with you. I could just shoot a quick interview. He said, where are you going to put it? And I said, well, I'd put it on YouTube and LinkedIn. And he's like, well, remember we have CVM. What else could I do for you? And I said, wait, what? What else? And I said, well, you could give me a quote for an article. He's like, yeah, done. What else could I do for you? And I said, okay, hold on. I don't understand. Why are you so giving? And he said, Jamaica needs more David Mullingses, and I am going to help you because you are going to help Jamaica. I will do whatever it takes to ensure that Blue Mahoe becomes the vehicle in the U.S. to invest back in Jamaica and the broader Caribbean. What do you need from me? I was like, what? Okay. No, I avoid asking for money, so what is it? Okay, what else? Well, Mike, I need like a magazine interview with us together, right? In the article together. No problem. What else you need? And he just kept going. And so the fifth time when he said, what else you need? I said, you know what? I said, man, I'm going to ask you something, that I hope you don't take offense. But this one is really important to me. I have studied 5 billionaires, and those are the 5 I look up to. Out of the 5, 3 of them ended up divorced. One ended up separated, and one is still happily married, and his children love him. How do I end up like Richard Branson and not you?
Not the rest. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to still be married to this person. And he was so excited. Him jump up from his desk, him run and get a legal pad, come back, and then talked about the importance of compound effort. Right? He asked me, what is the eighth wonder of the world according to Albert Einstein? And I said, oh, compound interest. And I said, man, you really are smart. Okay. And he draws this thing about time and effort, and that most of us start something, but then we fail. We decide, you know what, we're going to go a little bit more, but then we fail one more time. It hasn't happened in the time we expect. All our friends are laughing at us. The public is laughing at us. Our family is telling us to give up. And so we give up. That's usually over a 5-year span. And we give up and we start over. And we keep doing that every 5 years. And he says, what you need to do is push through. When you have the most frustration is when you must push through. And I said, oh, wow, that's interesting, Mike. F for frustration, push through, and then when you're MF, most frustration, you have to push through, because right on the other side is exponential growth. But you need to be careful. If you're doing the wrong thing, you're doing it wrong for a bit, you don't get in trouble. You keep doing it, you don't get in trouble. You do it one more time and you go to jail. What you choose to focus on matters. Be intentional. And I was like, wow, that's amazing, Mike. This is great business advice. What does this have to do with my marriage? And him laugh. And him say, think about this. When you're most frustrated with your wife is when you need to push through that frustration. You don't want to keep starting over. And then he signed it and says, frame this and put it on your bedside table in Jamaica. So when you visit without your wife, you wake up in the morning and you look at that and you remember you're going to push through the frustration. And I have never forgotten that. It still sits on our bedside table. In Jamaica, I draw it for other people. So at the end of it now, I've always been told to be a giver. So I said to Mike, great, you have given me so much. I appreciate that. What can I do for you? How can I help you? And he says, well, you're already helping me. I get to learn from you and your generation. And I said, oh, wow. He says, but there are 2 things you're going to need to do for me. And he said, number 1, I need you to pay it forward. And so what he said, every single thing I teach you is not for you alone. You must pay it forward. This is for other people. And I said, okay. And what's the second thing? And so the second thing is that you need to be a success. Pay it forward and be a success. And I said, man, I really appreciate the time. I can't believe that he gave me so much time on this advice. This is 45 minutes now going. And I said, you know, it's amazing that you do that. I didn't expect this kind of a meeting. I have to go and tell mom and dad what's going to happen. And that you're in and you're willing to do this meeting and this and open these doors for us, because I need some money now, right? I'm not here to ask you for money. And he says, oh, well, you know, you need to tell them this. You are going to have more impact than me. You are going to be wealthier than me. And I said, really, Mike, you're worth $2.2 billion US. You've donated tens of millions of dollars to charity. You've provided scholarships for so many students, paying for CXC. How am I going to have more impact than you, much less we work more than you? And he says, well, you have one advantage I didn't have. And I said, actually, I have 2. And he said, really? Really? What is this? And I said, well, number 1, I have you. I have you to learn from. I will never make your mistakes. I'll make new mistakes. I said, yeah, but that's cheating. That's an obvious one. What is the advantage that you have that I was going to tell you? I said, man, that's too easy, Mike. Because you're born in 1951 and I'm born in 81, you were doing mutual fund selling to the public, to retail investors. You had to cold call and knock on doors. As someone born as a millennial, I have the internet at my advantage. I will never have to cold call or knock on doors. I have email, I have social media, I have Facebook. And he says, you're right. You are right. You really are smart, right? He said, you are smart. That is right. And I said, yeah, I appreciate it. I get it. And he says, I said, but I'm not smart enough to shut up and let the teacher teach. And he laughed at him and said, oh, you really are smart. You really are smart, right? Never outshine the master type thing, right? 48 laws of power. And so we really hit it off and we feel like we're very similar. He sees me in him, but I have advantages and he wants to help me now execute this vision. And so before we leave, we stand in the hallway and he says, I need you to call your parents out here. You're going to call your parents and here's what you're going to tell them. And he tells me what to tell them. So I call mom and dad on the phone and I say, here's what Mike said to tell you. And I told them the stuff, went home And then I sleep now. I struggle to sleep, but I sleep. And I wake up the next morning at 7 a.m. Mom and dad call me on the NetSpeak phone, right? Call me on the overseas phone. I wake me up and say, man, I get teary-eyed every time I think about it. But mom and dad say, wow. Mom and I spoke last night and we thought about everything that Michael Leachin said he's going to do for you and what he said about you. And we believe in him. If he believes that much in you, who are we to doubt him? Please open your bank account, log into the app, take a screenshot and send it to Catherine, your wife. Please just go. We will catch you if you fall. And my parents had wired money into our bank account that allowed me to go and run like the wind for the next 4 months. Then we went and started raising money. That is why it was such a turning point. I was dealing with imposter syndrome. I was dealing with self-doubt. And one person who don't know me from Adam, not related to me, never have no links to them, say, I believe in you and I am going to help you and you can have more impact than me. You have an advantage I don't have. Why not? And from that day, nobody can tell me not to try something. Because I know that there are people who believe in me more than I even believe in myself. And I think it's important that we have those kinds of people in our life. You just need one person, one teacher at school, one family member, one mentor that say, hey, you know, so this can work, and I believe in you, and I go help.
Definitely.
And it's not always money. In fact, most times it's not money. You need some money, but most times you need belief first.
I mean, this is we could end the interview right here. That's just so much takeaway from that Michael Lee segment. Well, you know, I have to ask this. You mentioned it. I mean, before I even get into that, we all battle imposter syndrome some way, shape, or form, right? But you mentioned the part about your wife saying, if this doesn't work, you need to go look a 9 to 5.
Yeah, man.
And then you mentioned if you don't have the money to book the ticket to come back, then your parents will have to help you. Walk me through that period of struggle, the up and down. You mentioned lack of sleep or not sleeping properly.
Yeah, man.
Tell me all of that you dealt with during that period.
So every entrepreneur goes through what we would call depression. It might not be called clinical depression because somebody didn't diagnose you. But you have those periods where, hey, we raised the money, we're good, we're moving forward. We're running out of money. What just happened? I thought that I had this really good plan. I've done everything the book say. I do everything the mentor say, and it's still not working. And at some point, you have to look yourself in the mirror and decide, is this the person that I want to be? Or am I willing to do what it takes? So I've met entrepreneurs who went and drive Uber and Lyft at night so they can work on their business in the day. Or they've gone and worked, right? I've seen people 9 to 5 who need to pay off debt who go and take jobs at night doing boxes at Amazon because that money was going to pay off the business and they won't pay off the loans and they only have 4 hours of sleep. If you're not willing to endure pain for your big, hairy, audacious goal, then you will never achieve it. It takes pain, right? You go to the gym, it's painful to become healthy, but the problem is that it's painful to never try. I think it's worse. I don't want to be on a hospital bed ever again because I've been on a hospital bed once where I wondered, is this really it? Is this where my life ends? And I didn't do this, I didn't do it. All I had were regrets, you know. I never thought about the failed ventures. I thought about the things I never tried because I was afraid of what somebody was going to say. I was afraid somebody was going to laugh at me. I was afraid somebody was going to bring up a failure. I was on the bed, I didn't care. I was going to die. And all I thought was, geez, if this surgery is not successful, you know, I am going to be the most miserable person in heaven. Miserable because I never do this, and I'm 37 years old at the time when I'm in hospital. So, or 39. So when you have something happen to you that's painful and allows you to reflect on your life and the choices, because it is a choice. It is a choice to be great. It is a choice to be average. And there's nothing with choosing to be average, you know. That, trust me, I think they have less stress. That's fine. But if you feel that you have one talent and you never use a talent, it's going to haunt you for the rest of your life. And we grew up with the song, One Talent Have I. Trust me, don't take the talent to the sky. Use the talent. Use the talent. So that is what I felt, right? I felt that I'd put together this pretty detailed plan. I'd built visibility. I'd built traffic. I'd gone and done the MBA. I'd worked in corporate. I'd put in my own money. I'd taken out some debt on the credit cards. We'd raised some money from the friends and the family. We had started to do everything they say. You get the financials in place. You need to know your numbers. You need to know the business. You need to go after a large market. We do all of that. And it still don't work. And that's when you question your sanity. Like, man, what am I doing wrong? And then it's hard. It's very hard to reflect, especially, and it is harder for people like me who are high achievers, right? I started high school at 10. I graduated at 15. I graduated college at 19. Right? I am not normal. So I'm not used to having certain tests. Things come easily. No, man, not easy. Easy. And then you have this signal, and it was coming easy, and then boom, you get hit hard. And I remember sports. I remember football. Football didn't come easy. It took work. But it also took a team. Somebody's a forward, somebody's a midfielder, somebody's a defender, somebody's a goalie. I didn't play all the roles. In business, I was playing too many roles on the field. When I must lose then, build a team. And that's where I realized we made the mistake. We didn't build a team. And if you don't have a ton of money, you have to give them equity. Hey, we are now partners in this business. Let's do it together. And then when the money come in, we can all share in that. So those were the lessons. And I think all entrepreneurs go through that. It's called the valley of death. Most businesses, about year 5 or close to that, you're in this valley of death, and you need to be able to power through that valley. That's when you're going to have most frustration. You need somebody around you who's going to keep you honest and say, hey, we're about to run out of money to pay for baby formula. You know? So either you make it work or it becomes a side hustle. But you can't be delusional to the point of hurting other people, right? You can be delusional for yourself. We can live on the ramen noodles, that's fine. But once you have somebody else depending, especially a child that did not choose to come into this world, it's a different level of motivation. Different level of motivation.
Right. So true. No, I should have asked this earlier, but I'm going to ask it now. So Blue Mahoe Capital, right, became the first U.S. company to ever receive the
SEC Qualification, right?
Yes. To invest in the Caribbean. So
the qualification is to allow us to raise money from retail investors, right? Anybody can do a fund and raise money from 99 investors into a fund, and they have to be accredited investors into a private fund. Nobody before us had filed an offering statement with the SEC to be allowed to be qualified to raise money from non-accredited investors, the regular person. So the person that can invest in a mutual fund, they can invest in Blue Mahoe Capital, and we're invested in the Caribbean. Nobody has ever filed and done that. I have not done it twice.
So my question is, let me play the devil's advocate.
Yeah, man.
Why invest in the Caribbean? Why not invest in Miami or Texas or somewhere else in the U.S.? Why the Caribbean?
So I believe in and, not or. So I am not saying Caribbean or the United States. I think you as a person should have a diversified portfolio that's invested across different opportunities, different industries, different regions. I personally am focusing on a vehicle that fills a part of your portfolio. So if you think of it as a pizza, we are a slice of your investment portfolio. So you should invest in United States. You should invest in other international markets. You should invest in real estate. You should invest in early stage. You should invest in the Caribbean as part of your emerging markets portfolio. So we think of it this way. People go where there's yield. They're in search of returns. Where are the returns going to come from in the future? If you look at Europe, you look at the United States, in general, they've had low GDP growth. Right? You have individual companies that have done well, but in general, you have lower growth opportunities, the rates. Growth comes from emerging market countries. So we're talking about Latin America, Caribbean, Africa, Southeast Asia. That is where the growth is going to come from, because that is where the population growth comes from. And as you move people into the middle class, so I have growing population, growing middle class population, think India, then it means that they're going to spend more money. Consumer spending is going to go up, and these people are going to live longer. Japan, oldest in the world. Europe, next oldest. US and Canada, next oldest. Emerging markets, youngest. So they have the longest lifeline. They're going to have the most going into the middle class, which means they're going to spend money on things. That's how you make money. You sell things to people, services or products. The Caribbean is a part of that, but is overlooked. So I wanted to concentrate on a market that I have some moat, something special. Anybody can get into Brazil. They don't need me to invest in Brazil. There's an ETF for Brazil. There's no ETF for the Caribbean, no mutual fund for the Caribbean.
Yeah.
So if we're the only way for retail investors to invest in the Caribbean is poised for growth, right? We think of it as India 25 years ago, or the four Asian tigers, Taiwan, Singapore, South Korea, and so on, back in the 1980s. You know where the growth is going to come from. We're poised for that perfectly. We have a transition our economy. So this is where there's an energy transition. We need to move to digital banking and mobile money and remittances. We need affordable housing. We need food security. We need infrastructure. We're privatizing things that the government had. Family-owned companies are going public. We are urbanizing, right? Increasing urbanization. So many opportunities. We cannot just depend on tourism and one type of tourism anyway.
Exactly.
Right? We could invest in ecotourism and sports tourism, cultural tourism. But then we have an advantage in terms of culture and a large diaspora as well. So Jamaica alone has 3 million people in the diaspora. They all send remittances back. We're sending back 3.3 billion US dollars a year. How much of that is being invested though? Why are they not investing it? Because it's not all going into the stock market. It's not going all into real estate, because they need something that's regulated. Exactly. It's friends and family. It's not like investment. It's help. They would love to invest though, because they see other people coming in, right? If only the foreigners are going to invest in the Caribbean today, who is going to own it tomorrow? We have to pool our money together, essentially like throwing a partner. We have to pool our money together to then have equity. We need ownership in our own countries so we can solve our own problems. But for us to be able to do that in a way that we feel confident, right? There's a trust deficit. We need to do it in a regulated way. So this is regulated investment opportunities. We need something that has good governance in place, that is transparent. What we are doing with the money, how much money I make, how you pay yourself. We need those. But we also need access. Well, the best way to give access is to be publicly traded. That's why mutual funds are listed, exchange-traded funds are listed, real estate investment trusts are listed, companies are listed. So whether it's a Berkshire Hathaway or an Apple or a BlackRock or a Blackstone, a listed company on a major stock exchange, not listed in Jamaica. We need it in the US, Canada, or UK, where the diaspora already is. Then they can say, oh, I can pull up my app or go into my brokerage account and just buy IRI. And I know that every dollar is being invested in the Caribbean in an impactful way. And I can check it. I can see quarterly reports. I know they have to send reports into the SEC if certain things change. It can pay dividends. I can see how my dividends work. I can sell when I want to sell. You don't have to ask somebody what you do with the money and can I get back my money? How is it performing? It's transparent. So just the same way you do Apple is the same way you would invest in what we're doing. That's the goal, to get listed on Nasdaq and give people that access. It so happens that it's not just the diaspora that wants access to investing in the Caribbean that way. There are pension funds, there are endowment funds at universities, there are climate exchange traded funds who want that access, but they cannot invest in private companies. They have to invest in listed companies. So we get to be the only listed company in the US, Canada, UK focused on broad Caribbean investments. And when we also get the listing done, right now there are only 6 Black-owned companies listed on a major US stock exchange. We would get to be number 7. We are here to make history. That is what is focused on. Give people a regulated, audited, transparent company that's publicly traded, positively impacting the Caribbean.
Awesome. That's awesome. What is the single hardest problem you had to solve knowing the blueprint didn't exist? And how do you think Caribbean founders who are trying to build something the first of its kind like you're doing approach the same problem?
Man, you're giving me PTSD. That's why I had to laugh. That question right there took me back into a painful memory. The single biggest problem that we had to solve was figuring out which securities regulations to use to be able to reach out to retail investors that allows me to generate solicit. I need to market at scale. I can't just go and do private events and spend a ton of money doing town halls. We need to do exactly what mutual funds and ETFs do. But there are rules around how you do that. And then the regulations that we use didn't allow me to invest in what I felt was the safest investment. I felt that we want to pool money, and the first thing you do is buy shares of publicly traded companies listed in Jamaica. We had the best performing stock exchange in the whole world for 5 years. That's an easy story to go and sell to people. Oh, but you can't buy from over here. You have to fly down, 5 pieces of paperwork, 2 letters of references. They've now gotten rid of the letters of references.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah.
still painful to open that investment account to then go and buy down there and then to get your dividends. They want to invest through a U.S. company. But I can't use these specific regulations to go to retail investors and take their money and buy stock. So we had to go back and figure out, how do we design a company that does not become what's called a 40 Act company? There's a registration here in the US that labels it as an investment company. And we needed to avoid that because it would force us to not own the majority of the public companies we wanted in the Caribbean. Because we can't. That's why nobody has an ETF or a mutual fund. And we spent a year and a half and a lot of money with the lawyers trying to figure out how to do that. And it popped down and couldn't do it. And so we had to wheel and come again. All right, can do public equities. Can I do private equity? Yes, but then you have to get audits for every company you'd buy, and you have to disclose that before you take the money. Wow, that's hard. Okay, third one, you could do private credit. We can lend money to some companies in the Caribbean. Yes, that can work. Okay. We'd have to underwrite that well. And lastly, you could do real estate. Oh, that's the easiest thing. I was like, really? I said, yeah, real estate. So I wasn't a real estate expert. I came from the public equities world. I worked at a hedge fund, and the private equity world. I worked in low and middle market private equity. So I had to then put on, some big boy pants and go and talk to the real estate people and then bring them into our business as advisors and on the team
Yeah.
to figure out, how do we invest in real estate in the Caribbean, start in Jamaica? What would we invest in? And in this case, we want to build affordable housing, and because we want to solve a problem. The other important lesson that was a hard one for me, I had my idea about the business. Guys, here's what we're going to do, because this is how wealth is created. So we're going to take your money and it's going to be split this way, and this way, and here's why. And we're going to build a Berkshire Hathaway of the Caribbean. Most people look at me like, oh, what? Me never hear about that. Me don't know who Warren Buffett. I don't know him company. Work. And then I got into teacher mode. I became lecturer mode. I tried, right? I'd call it Professor Mullings mode, because I'm now happy to be fostering financial literacy. I want to teach people what I know. And somebody just said to me, Mr. Mullings, I love that you want me to be more financially literate, but honestly, you can't just give me what I want. I just want to invest in some real estate in Jamaica. And your company is the only one in the US I can go through to do that under US laws. Just give us what we want, no man.
Simple.
Then deliver for us, pay a nice return, and then we'll follow you to the moon. But give people what they want. It's not about what you want. We as founders can really get caught up with what we want to do, what we think is a solution. And what we need to do is listen to the market. Give the market what it wants. Build credibility, build profitability. Then you can use that to then go and do another company or do another piece of the company or expand what you want to do and really do over time. So don't start and be wedded to it. You have to be flexible and learn from the market. I would say well, Mike Tyson says that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? You go into the ring, you have a plan until they get punched in the face. And the same thing, I think it's General Patton or somebody that says that no plan of action survives contact with the enemy. So you can make all the plans in the world, but the minute you put it out into the public, it going to change. And so you have to become nimble, but stay in the game. And that's what I would say was the biggest lesson. It wasn't about doing it my way. It was doing it in a profitable way. That's what matters.
That's so true. You mentioned affordable housing in Jamaica. So my first question, follow-up questions on Blue Mahoe. If I'm from Trinidad, living in the US, can I invest in Blue Mahoe? And
Yes.
how would that benefit my people in Trinidad?
So the idea is that we're not just investing in Jamaica. Right? We specifically name 4 countries in our document as our highest priorities. So I learned very early on. I would go and pitch, obviously, to rich white people. That's the first set of people I had relationships with, and then rich black people. When I pitch into the rich white people, I would say that I want to invest in CARICOM. And I have these 4 buckets that we want to do: real estate, private credit, private equity, public equities. And they would just be like, what is CARICOM? And I'm here thinking that you're a multimillionaire. We mean you don't know what CARICOM is, right? We all think rich people are smarter than us. No. Not they're experts at what they know. And so I got tired of explaining that CARICOM is like the EU And I said, you know what, guys? And I tested this one in Miami at an event. And I said, at the Greenwich Economic Forum in Miami. And I got on stage for the fireside chat. And when somebody say, so you investing in the Caribbean? Where in the Caribbean? And what would you invest in? What is there to invest in? And I said, well, you remember the 4 Asian tigers? Everybody's nodding. I said, good. Well, we have 4 Caribbean tigers. Jamaica, Barbados, Bahamas, and Guyana. Oh, that makes sense. And I said, what would you have invested in the 1980s in the 4 Asian tigers? And everybody is now telling me infrastructure, telecommunications. It did. I said, okay, then. I said, well, it's the same thing in the Caribbean because we're 25 years behind. I said, it's the same exact thing. And it was done. It was the easiest pitch I've ever made in my entire life. So that's why we talk about 4 Caribbean tigers, but we're actually investing in CARICOM. It's just PR speak. It makes it so much easier. So yes, we are investing across the region and we'll take our time getting there. But the idea is that we can't get to Trinidad or the Belizes of this world or the St. Lucias unless we start somewhere. And most people don't like the idea of spreading themselves too thin. What we need to do is start with a market that we know like the back of our hand, that we trust, and we're going to experiment. You test, you learn, and then you grow. So we start with Jamaica because I have the most experience in Jamaica, and we've also had a great story. We've reduced our debt to GDP ratio from 147% to 72% and on our way to 60%. We're a case study that the IMF is now using to show. Here's what Greece did. Here's what Jamaica did. You should be like Jamaica. So there's a story there that makes it easy to sell somebody on Jamaica. Right? Guyana you sell them when oil is happening and boom, great. You want to find essentially a parade and then step in front of it. That is what I started marketing. Find a parade and step in front of it. So it comes to real estate. What's happening in real estate? I'm not interested in building expensive apartments in Kingston. I have no interest in that. What is the parade right now? Affordability. There's an affordability crisis in the entire world. This is not unique to Jamaica. This is a U.S. problem, is a Cayman problem, is a Trinidad problem, is a Barbados problem, is a Ghana problem. We have an affordability crisis. How do you solve the affordability crisis for homes? Increase supply. You need to increase supply and you need to build homes at that price point. Great. Turns out Jamaica needs 150,000 houses. Before Melissa, it was 100,000 or so. You need 150,000 houses. 70,000 people are qualified for National Housing Trust Support, NHT, right? We did what Singapore do. We have NHT to help you with that. We can complain that they're not working perfect, but we have 70,000 people. How many houses are Jamaica building every year? 3,000? 4,000 if we're lucky? So you have a market that needs 70,000. Right now, qualified 70,000 people can buy. Needs 150,000. So we have a total addressable market of 150,000. We have a serviceable addressable market that's 70,000. They qualified. We just need 500, 1,000, 5,000. I mean, if we come and say we're building 1,000 houses right now in Jamaica at that affordable price point for NHT, they're gone. We don't need to advertise. We just put up a post on Twitter and everybody get run us down, and we go on TV and everybody run us down. So we are solving a real problem, right? Find a pain point. As an entrepreneur, find a pain point and then solve that problem. Jamaica alone, 150,000. Barbados needs 30,000. You could go to Guyana. Turks and Caicos has reached out to us. So that's why, as a Trinidadian sitting in the U.S., you would invest in Blue Mahoe because we will come to your country next. And we're not going to just do housing. Once we go public, we can do other things. Real estate is land. You can look at food security. Right? Trinidad needs to diversify their economy from just oil and manufacturing. Every single country needs to ensure food security. Every one of them needs to worry about energy transition and clean energy. Every single one of them wants to talk about clean water. So there are opportunities for us to go and invest in.
So true. No, you started with $250,000 raised from friends and family. You can correct me if that is wrong.
I started with way less than that. I started with $15,000. $15,000. Me, my brother, mom, dad, and 2 friends, $15,000 invested in the Jamaican market in 2018. That's how we started.
Walk me through how your relationship with capital has changed across the journey, and specifically, what do you wish you had known about raising money in the Caribbean context that nobody tells first-time founders?
Oh, boy. You're going to put together your 18-month plan, right? You really need to understand how much money you need to run the business over the next 18 months because raising money is a full-time job. So you don't want to keep raising while working in the business. Then you're running two jobs. The biggest thing was that most of us as founders of color, black people, we have a hard time raising money, and our own people don't trust us. No matter how much you know your numbers, the board they put together, you get it SEC qualified, there's somebody out there telling people, me not trust them, don't trust them, is a scam. We have been taught to put our money under the mattress and not pool money together. There are other ethnic groups who happily come with each other and say, oh yeah man, I'm starting something, I go and support, I go and help, I go and open the door, here's a check. We have to learn to be united, right? Some other people made sure that we weren't united. We need to decide to come together. So that's one of the hardest things, is expecting your own people to support you, and they don't. And support is not always writing a check. Support is words of encouragement. Support is advice. Support is opening a door. Instead, we have this crab in a barrel mentality. And we pull each other down and we think, why them think them can do that? I don't even understand how to do that. I could never do that. Okay, and that's fine. You can't run less than 10 seconds in 100 meters. That don't mean somebody else shouldn't try though. Right? We drag down too many people. So that is one of the hardest things as an entrepreneur of color, is that when you go out to raise the money and you're public about that, because you have to pitch. So you have to go and do the public relations and get yourself out there in the media. And then there are people who say, oh, you should be quiet and don't say a word. Hey, how you going to raise money? You're not sitting around money. You're not having that network. You have to build a network. You have to go out and be like Richard Branson and promote yourself and promote your vision. That way you find a tribe. And it's no different from being Sean Paul and decide, I am making dancehall music. I need to put my music out there. I'm not going to change my music for anybody. I'm going to put my music and find my tribe. I will find my fans and then cater to my fans and ignore the noise from everybody else. That's what entrepreneurship is. You're making music for your fan base, and then you're going to slowly build the fan base. Most of us focus on getting everyone to like us, getting everyone to invest, when what we should be doing is qualifying and getting to know as quickly as possible. And the other challenge that we faced was that we had people who said yes because they like what we're doing. They see the opportunity, they say yes, sign paperwork. You now go and make commitments to other people based on the dollars that have been committed to come in by this date, and then those people don't come true. I was raised that a handshake is as good as signed paper. Your reputation matters, ethics matters. It turns out, especially in the Caribbean and especially among black people, that don't exist. There's no such thing as ethics, values, and handshake agreements. It just don't work. And then on top of that, we have this soon come attitude in the Caribbean. No sense of urgency. It's like, no, but I need the money now to go and do the deal now or to qualify for this. No, man, then just take them time. And they don't respond. You have a meet in person. Like, hello, we had an agreement. Why is it taking so long? Stop dragging things out. Get it done, or tell the person, you know what, I made a commitment, but something has come up and I have to back out of that. Nothing wrong with that. Don't ghost people, don't disappear and then come back later. Oh, I see that you have an SEC qualification. Can I still get the friends and family rate from last year? And believe in you in year 3, year 5, going to come back and stab you in the back and say, no, I don't want this again, it's taking too long. Even though they signed something that said it could take that long. They knew what they were getting into. They knew the risk they were taking, but then they treat it like it's a bank account and say, yeah, man, I know I did give you money for go help launch Facebook, but Facebook not public yet and I want my money back. Or Amazon is not public yet, I want my money back. Excuse me? Did you understand what it takes to get this done? And usually these people who have never had to raise money in their entire life. They've worked 9 to 5. They have no idea what it takes to start a business, pay legal, hire staff, cover expenses. So they really don't understand the damage that they do to early stage founders when they pull the rug from under them. And when they try to explain to them, they say life is not fair. Okay, well, guess what? Life is not fair. You invested in a startup.
Very true. A lot of persons don't understand the risks when it comes to startups.
They claim they do, you know. They claim they do, especially when they're wealthy. They've made money as a senior manager or a lawyer, an investment banker. Yeah, man, I understand the risk of investing in your startup. And then when the startups fail, oh, you lose more money or you waste more money. You said you understood the risk. right? We know Facebook, it succeeded. Do you know all the other social networks that didn't succeed?
Failed, yeah.
Yeah. Google was not the first search engine. It was not the first one to do pay-per-click. Facebook was not the first social media platform. So
MySpace, High Five, all of those.
MySpace, High Five, the man, you see, you know the thing. Come on, guys. You remember Ask
Yeah.
Jeeves and Alta Vista? Hello, we have
Yeah.
InfoSeek. There are other companies that are in this space. You have to be patient and support that entrepreneur. If you can't do that, don't invest in early stage companies. Wait for it to be profitable and publicly traded, and it's safe and you can buy later. Right? Don't buy the first version of the iPhone if you're expecting an iPhone 10. Just understand your risk tolerance and then don't add stress to somebody's life who is already under immense stress. Starting a business is stressful. Trying to scale a business is additionally stressful. Raising money from people multiplies the stress 100-fold because every dollar you take is another co-owner in your business. That's what that is. When you take money from someone for your business, they are now a co-owner.
Yeah.
So that's extra stress. Boy, I don't want to lose my cousin's money, or my mom's money. You're careful. It's extra stress. When somebody now comes and harasses you about it, that is just making it worse. And you know what you want to do? You want to just get them at the money and say, oh, leave me alone. And then you don't want them in your life anymore. But it's a great way to figure out who are really there for your supporters versus who just want to ride on your coattails, who wants access, who wants to be around you. Being an entrepreneur will allow you to curate your circle and shrink your circle in a way that you should already be doing in your personal life anyway. Not everybody around you means well for you.
So true. Now, I want to ask you what Blue Mahoe has cost you personally, not financially.
Oh, God.
But personally.
Why you want to give me PTSD with these questions, man?
We have to be open and honest and let founders know the struggles
oh, geez,
of
man.
entrepreneurship. Yeah.
What has Blue Mahoe costed me personally? It cost me my appendix and my right colon. That's actually what it cost me. It has forever changed my life, right? I was scarred down my entire stomach from my chest down to my pelvis, 67 metal staples, and you can count every single one of the scars from the staples going down my chest as well. So I ended up in the hospital. I had a tumor, and thankfully it was malignant, but it is cancer. I had a tumor of the appendix that had grown into my colon, and I predominantly think it was because of stress. There was just so much stress. My eating habits had changed. I'd moved to Germany for 4 months while I was in a startup accelerator program there as well. And so I was under a tremendous amount of stress going into that period of life. This is 39 years old, so 7 years ago. And I got rushed to hospital, and so we did surgery. I lost, my gosh. I lost a lot of weight, 20 pounds, just like that, overnight. I was in hospital for 2 weeks, 14 days. I had to wait 10 days just to, hospital for 10 days. I had to wait 5 days for the results if I'm going to need chemo or any sort of therapy like that or not. Thankfully, I didn't. But then I then had to spend 2 weeks at home in bed, 6 weeks of recovery, and then quarterly visits to an oncologist. That then switched to annual visits, 2 colonoscopies. My next colonoscopy is scheduled for August this year. Right at 46 years old, I'd have had 3 colonoscopies, all clear. Make sure that nothing had regrown. But that's what it is. It costs me physical pain, and there's a reminder every day when I take off my shirt or when I go to the football field and I change my shirt after I sweat, and some guy never says, Yo, look upon that scar there. What did happen to you? And then I get to talk to them about the importance of screening for colon cancer or prostate cancer and so on. So it becomes a teachable moment for them. But that's what it cost me. It almost cost me my marriage, right? It has cost me years with my children. The kids have pointed out that the oldest one, Luke, he's 14 now, and he says Lila, the 8-year-old, our daughter, is the luckiest out of the 3 of them.
Yeah.
I said, what? I don't understand. How is she the luckiest? I was the oldest. I felt I was the luckiest. You're the oldest. Why aren't you the luckiest? And I says, well, Daddy, I'm 14. I only have 4 more summers and Christmases with you. Lila is 8. She has 10 more summers and Christmases with you. You were always traveling up until COVID. You were never here. COVID allowed us to have time with you. But now you're back to traveling like a madman. Wow. All this time, I am thinking I'm building a business that's going
For
to
them.
then allow me to take care of this family and they get to have an even better life than I had, right? Each generation, in my opinion, should
Should be
make
better.
it better
Yeah.
for the next one. So my
Mhm.
parents went through pain, right? Mom used to walk barefoot 7 miles with one pair of shoes in her hand out in Alston to go to school. And dad was waking up at 4 in the morning to cut bush to feed the cows. So that's what they went through. And then they paid a price. They gave me a better life. Then I want to give my kids an even better life. And what my children saying to me, boy, no, daddy, you fly like a madman and you never hear. Gosh, I thought I was doing this for them, man. As dad said to me, no, you were doing it for yourself. It was never for them. You were doing it for yourself. Just admit that. So
Yeah.
now we've had to adjust. I don't like the word balance. Right now, it's summer. Priority is the kids. It's not balance. I am more focused on my wife and my kids and this marriage and them during summer because they're off. My wife is a teacher and the kids go to school. They're off for summer. They have my undivided attention. If I have a travel, I ask permission to go and travel. And if they can't come, they have to give me permission. Otherwise, they come in, right? When it's work time, and we have to then make adjustments. Okay, Luke has his school play, Liam is doing this, Lila has a recital, and I make sure I'm there for that. Right? But it's about prioritizing your life. I don't think it can balance. It's a seesaw. One time it's all family, next time it's going to be business, and we're going back. And that's how life going to keep going. Up, down, until I can afford to have them with me at all times, great. But that is what I've had to sacrifice. I've physically given up a piece of my body. I've paid an offering to the god of entrepreneurship, whatever you want to call it, right? I paid an offering. I have this car to show for it. Well, I will admit that I recently got my first tattoo. I got a Zelda Triforce on my right shoulder because my wife, she got one as well. And we said, we're going to do something together. My boys, when I was asking them, what tattoo should I get? Here, Luke, you know, Daddy, you should get 2 lines, one on either side, 2 jagged lines, one on either side of the scar. And I said, really? For what? And he said, well, when you're at the beach and somebody asks, what happened to you? You can say, oh, I got into a fight with Wolverine. I was like, this is my child. This is my child. I love that they could take the pain because they came to the hospital. They saw me with all these tubes. And they could take the pain and make joke out of it. And no, I could take it and make a joke out of it. Because otherwise that scar means something negative. Now the scar means something positive.
Positive, yeah.
But I don't ever really gonna get that tattoo. That sounds like it would hurt.
Not yet.
Not yet for sure. Definitely don't know. My pain tolerance not that high.
A lot of persons really don't think of the emotional and physical stress that running a business can put on your body. You've made this statement many times, many platforms. So you've been saying this for years. Jamaica will become the Singapore of the Western Hemisphere, right? We have the British legal system. We have our natural harbor. We're at a major shipping lane and right next to the largest economy on the planet. You made this case on Bloomberg, in Forbes, boardrooms across the US, local media. But what has to break first before this vision becomes reality? So
let's start with context first, because I think people use the Singapore-Jamaica comparison out of context, which allows some people to jump and say, oh, well, Singapore had this kind of benevolent dictator or this with culture. And it's not that we're saying that Jamaica will be the Singapore of the Western Hemisphere, right? What I've said is that Jamaica can be compared to a Singapore of the Western Hemisphere. And the idea being, when I think about what Singapore represents in the Eastern Hemisphere, we're thinking about a safe society, a clean society, efficient society, accessible housing for their people, a focus on education, open to foreign investment, business friendly, and most importantly, no corruption. Those are the things that we want, right? We should add green and good infrastructure for transport. But that's what you think of and it's not just Singapore, there are other countries, maybe Costa Rica, there are other countries we can think of. Singapore of the Western Hemisphere because of the similarities, and I would lay it out always, and some Jamaicans give me flack when I point this out in Jamaica. I ask them some questions. I said, there are 2 countries that I'm going to talk about, Singapore and Jamaica. I'm going to give you some things, and you tell me which country I'm speaking about. And I said, this country had a population of less than 3 million people, multiple ethnicities, was a British colony, and got independence in the 1960s. Which am I speaking about, Jamaica or Singapore?
Jamaica.
Yeah, both.
Yeah, both.
Both countries, right? This country became a member of a federation before it got independence. It has a British parliamentary system, British legal system, has a very large naturally protected port and makes it important for shipping lanes. Which country? Jamaica or Singapore?
Singapore.
Both.
Both, yeah.
This country had a leader who decided that we have no hinterland or fresh water. Our people are our only resource, and so we need to invest in them. So we're going to invest in education, and we're going to have zero tolerance for corruption. Which country?
Singapore.
Exactly. And every Jamaican can immediately know which country you're talking about with that one. That is the context of Jamaica could be the Singapore of the Western Hemisphere, based on its position, based on its advantages, based on its history. It could follow that trajectory. We have missed some key things. Corruption has been Jamaica's biggest problem. We start with that. Number two, not properly investing in education. We have been too focused on extractive industries for the most part. So we start with green gold and banana. We want to go to sugar. We move on to bauxite. Then we decide it's going to be garment manufacturing. Then we go on to tourism. We keep having these single-based economies rather than broad-based, diverse economies. But we don't deal with corruption. It don't matter what else we do. As long as Jamaica has leadership that people can point to as tolerant of corruption or even being corrupt themselves in both political parties. This is not unique to one party. As long as we can point to that and feel confident in saying that we have a corruption problem and we're not serious about it, Jamaica will never approach not even Costa Rica. And that is the fundamental problem that needs to be addressed. It's the elephant in the room and we all know it. That's the problem. But this is not unique to Jamaica. This is every developing country. I could go tell me an African country, we're probably going to talk about corruption. Give me a Latin American country, we're going to talk about corruption. So it's not that it's special. Jamaica is not special in having a corruption problem. What is special is that Singapore had leadership who chose to think long-term and overcome it. And that's why the Singapore example keeps coming up. We started from the same level at the same time. Singapore had a bigger advantage than us, though. And it's not that they were predominantly Chinese. The biggest advantage is that they didn't have the United States interfering in their political system and saying that you are my backyard, me run you. Jamaica had unique situations to deal with from a geopolitics standpoint, and that also has affected. And we have to be honest. So nobody is saying that we want to be Singapore. What we want to say is that we want to learn from Singapore. We want to learn from Estonia. We want to learn from Costa Rica and Bhutan and all these other places that have had success. In fact, you want to look at somewhere like Rwanda. You want to say, South Africa, they went through worse than we went through. How did they manage to turn the corner? Or did they not turn the corner? What can we learn from these countries? Benchmarking matters. Case studies matter. What can work, you bring over. What can work, you don't bring over. We're not saying copy and paste. No country can copy and paste another one. So many countries around the world have tried to copy and paste Silicon Valley. It don't work. Right? There are unique things that created Silicon Valley. And you need to have all those things in place. We don't have that. So we're not going to have a Silicon Valley in Jamaica because we don't have those things. We need to have our own thing unique to us. So that's what I mean by Singapore. But when I said it on Bloomberg, we have to talk in sound bites, right? They literally tell us we want 30 to 45-second answers. Let's get this done quick. Get sound bites that are clippable. That's the idea. I don't have an hour and a half interview on Bloomberg. So when him asked me, what do you tell a potential investor when you meet with them about Jamaica? What are you selling them on? Because in his head, Jamaica is about tourism and Jamaica is also about call centers. That's what they think. And I needed them to think bigger. Think bigger about the country. I know and see opportunity in every day, guys. So what I know I could say to them is that Singapore, just like how I can say, 4 Asian tigers, 4 Caribbean tigers. This is a soundbite. It's easy to understand. Great. Singapore, yes. Here's why. Well, look at Jamaica. Here's this stuff. Oh, I didn't know that. We get to educate people by using those analogies. That is why Singapore is useful, to explain to non-Jamaicans what the opportunity is. We have to have a vision, right? People, I've learned words don't work. You talk about storytelling. Show, don't tell. But if I'm talking with you, I can't literally show you the thing. So what I need to do is tell you something that you can visualize, that means you have to understand it. So you know Singapore, you probably haven't thought about Costa Rica, you probably haven't thought about Rwanda or Botswana or Estonia. But I can say Singapore, and you get it. And I say, man, imagine Singapore in the Western Hemisphere. Oh, great. Makes sense. I can't tell them Cayman in the Western Hemisphere. That don't make sense. It's in the Western Hemisphere. So that's if Cayman was the one where Singapore is, I would be saying Cayman of the Western Hemisphere. That is the idea. And but again, that just explains marketing and PR and why we have to use those things. Jamaicans especially are triggered when they bring up Singapore because of that history. Lee Kuan Yew has come to Jamaica twice. So we are literally triggered by the comparison of Singapore. So I've learned not to bring up Singapore, the country. You bring up the things that are similar without naming the country, because I don't know a single Jamaican who don't want good road, good public transport, safe country, business friendly, efficient, corruption free. I don't know which Jamaican going to say, no man, I don't want that. Yeah, well, it better be clean. Yeah, who going to say no to that? Why would you possibly say no? Vision 2030 Jamaica actually lays out all of those things. Every single one of those are listed in. Food security is in there, lower cost of energy is in there. Okay, great. I love it. Don't mention Singapore anymore. I learned.
Why do you think the Caribbean consistently undersells itself?
You know what? You might be surprised at this answer. I would say it's because we have not emancipated ourselves from mental slavery. We believe what the colonizers taught us about ourselves. When we leave and go elsewhere in the Caribbean diaspora, when we go anywhere we go, boy, we punch above our weight. We liquor, but we tolerate. Every one of us.
Yeah.
So how is it that at home we don't believe that we can do this? We don't believe that we could even be better than Singapore? I think it's because someone has been telling us for so long, you are less than.
Yeah.
You need my system for it to work. You need my money for it to work. So you need to use my judicial system, my democratic system, right? We inherited a parliamentary system. Parliamentary system is for a more developed country, to be honest. You need to do something different that works for you. The Queen is a head of state. Why? They don't care about us as a Privy Council.
Yeah.
Why? They don't care about us. We're the natives. So we have to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. And that is what I believe is our fundamental problem. The second one is because they've done that to us, we are not united. It's not one Caribbean. It's Jamaicans versus Trinis. It's Bayesians versus this. Yeah, man. We keep fighting against each other. But as Dad said to me when I did complain about the crab in a barrel mentality of black people in general, and then Caribbean people in particular, Dad said, well, think about this. Are crabs naturally in a barrel? I said, no, Dad. And he says, yes, exactly. Somebody has to put the crabs in the barrel. So think about who put the crabs in the barrel, and then you can go from there. So once you recognize that you're actually not in a barrel, right? The barrel is like the matrix. It's a construct. When you realize that, oh, the matrix isn't real. I am free. Then the crabs will work together. That's what happens. Crabs actually work. You ever see crabs crossing a road? Oh, my goodness. Thousands of them. They work together. Could be millions. They work together. So crabs don't naturally pull each other down. They naturally work together. We need to decide that we're going to be united. And that's why CARICOM needs to actually function. CARICOM today is a bunch of little fiefdoms run by individual kings and queens who want to protect their little piece. We have not focused on coming together as one, speaking as one, as a population of 45 million people, when include Haiti, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Cuba. These are all Caribbean. 45 million people, a diaspora of 10 million. And we, $20 billion a year in remittances, 20 billion coming back. Caribbean people are all walks of life in all sorts of companies and governments at all sorts of levels. And we have not been united and speaking as one voice. It's a shame. And I think that my generation has to change that.
We have to change our mindset in order to change our life. And that's the only way we can improve as a region and work together.
Yeah. We have to stop and look in the mirror. Man in the mirror moment and say, is this really what we're about? Or am I fed up with my life as it is today? And so I'm going to do something to change it. That's what we have to do now. time come
Awesome.
for us to do that.
All right. So, Blue Mahoe, you've been building this. How far are you from achieving what you set out to achieve since the inception?
Oh, man, I love that question because I saw a quote a few days ago that was after we got the qualification on the Thursday. This is June, right? So last week Thursday we got the qualification on SEC. Somebody sent me a little quote because they congratulated me, and I'm saying, yeah, man. This is just a second step. There's so much more to do, man. And he's just like, no, pause. And the quote basically was saying that when your dreams and your visions are so big, you fail to realize how far you've come. And so I have such a big plan with very clear steps, and I can visualize it. I can taste it. To me, it's like, oh man, this feel like, to me, this is step 2 of a 20-step plan. I'm on step 2. Everybody on the outside who doesn't know the plan is just like, man, this is incredible. This is amazing. And I'm just thinking like, man, I literally just took 2 rungs up the ladder. Like I'm not even close to where I want to get. So for me, I feel that I am barely anywhere. I've taken 2 steps and I have a lot more steps to go. I do have to pause and reflect and realize that what I consider 2 steps is actually not 2 steps. It's a massive number of steps that came before. And we are now at a major position, right? Even if the company never goes public, we can still raise money privately every year, every 12 months, and we know how to do this, and we can execute the vision. I don't intend to stay private, though. We intend to take this public, then we intend to invest across the entire Caribbean in more than just real estate, then we intend to add Africa to it and become a Black-owned investment firm for majority Black countries. That is what is needed. We need to pool our capital to support ourselves because that's what everybody else does. There's nothing wrong with that. That is the vision, a Black-owned Berkshire Hathaway. That is where I need to go. So when you understand what Warren Buffett has built with Berkshire Hathaway over that period of time, 50 plus years, now you understand what my vision really is. And you understand why this step of getting a vehicle that can raise money from retail investors, just like Warren Buffett can raise from retail, we need to be listed. When we get listed now, right now we can only raise from U.S. persons. I need that to expand to be able to raise from people in the Caribbean, people in Canada, people in UK, Europe, Asia. So going public allows us to do that. Then we can really scale. So that gives you an idea of how close we are to what I consider launch. This is not launch. This is engine test. We've built the rocket ship. We've trained the astronauts. We've brought in the support system. We are on the launch pad and the engines are warming up. Now we need to fuel the rocket. That's what the money is. Fuel the rocket and then we take off. The nice thing I remember Dad was saying to me that I said, yeah, Dad, the sky's the limit. And he said, no, don't ever say that in this house. You have a Bachelor of Science degree. You know that the sky is not the limit. What you need to do is aim to get into orbit, get into outer space. Because once you have escape velocity, you get out of the Earth's gravitational pull, you actually don't need any more fuel. Your momentum will keep you going.
Keep it going, yeah.
I just need enough fuel to launch and get escape velocity. So we need 5 million of stockholders' equity to list on the Nasdaq. That gives us escape velocity. We can then coast if we want. We can then go and refuel. But no, the sky is not the limit. We have to think bigger than that. We want to get to outer space.
I love that analogy so much. So
Yeah,
my
man, big up
last
Dr.
question, Daddy Mullings. So let me ask you this last question. Like someone is in the Caribbean right now, a young person, or maybe not so young, they're sitting with an idea, a plan, maybe even a 15-year vision written on paper like yourself. They have everything except the belief that this region can actually produce what they're trying to build. Based on everything you've built, everything you have failed at, and everything you still believe is possible, what do you want them to know?
I want them to know that they're not crazy, they're not delusional to think big. You need to have big, hairy, audacious goals, but I also need them to understand that patriotism does not pay the bills. You need to go where the fish are. That's where you fish. You fish where the fish are. So if you need a certain kind of capital for a certain kind of business, then you need to move, right? The same seed planted in a desert will not grow versus the same seed that's planted in fertile soil. You need to recognize that you are literally not stuck there. You're born in a country by accident. You had nothing to do with it. You can choose to go where you can best achieve your dreams. And don't let anybody ever make you feel like you have to stay and suffer and give up on the dream. Go where you need to go. You can always come back home and make it better if it wasn't working there. I don't live in Jamaica. I visit Jamaica. If I had stayed in Jamaica, because I could have gone to UWI free of charge and become a medical doctor. I did CXCs, right? I did geography, Spanish, biology, chemistry, and physics. I did the sciences. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in biology and math in chemistry, religion, and economics. If I stayed in Jamaica, I'd be a medical doctor, just like my father. My mother is a nurse. So I grew up in a family that did medicine. If I had stayed in Jamaica, I would not be doing this. I wouldn't be on here talking to you. I wouldn't be the person you know as David Mullins, inspiring people and talking about entrepreneurship and investing, because I wasn't exposed to those things down there. I don't have a legal structure to do what I'm doing to raise money from retail investors as a private company. Jamaica has no laws that allow me to generate solicit under them. In fact, most countries don't. This is a US, Canada, UK approach to doing that. I couldn't even do this in Europe. I couldn't go to France and do this. So it's important to understand that if you have a bold vision, you need to figure out where is that vision best executed. Then I can always transition and change where I really want to change. And you shouldn't feel bad, and it shouldn't make anybody feel bad. Go where you are appreciated.
So true. That's the end of my questions that I have for you. But this section, it's the Founders Final 5, and these are questions submitted by the founderpreneur community. Let's get into it. This first one is a bit long. Outside of real estate, tourism, and anything dependent on government, where do you see the single biggest infrastructure gap in the Caribbean that the private sector could realistically close in the next decade? Why hasn't anyone closed it yet? And what would change for the people living in the Caribbean if someone did? And would Blue Mahoe back the right team going after it? This is supposed to be one question.
Yeah, man, one question.
Yeah, three. Yeah.
So I love that. The first part is that Blue Mahoe Holdings is setting up an innovation fund to the early stage. So when you say back a team, that's probably means it's earlier stage. It's not a group that's already profitably existing business, which is what Blue Mahoe Capital faces, right? That's what we focus on. Two different asset classes, two different risk profiles. And the answer is yes, Blue Mahoe Innovation Fund that we're setting up would back the right team for something we understand and believe in. If I could pick one thing, the one I feel is the biggest overlooked and could have the biggest impact on the Caribbean is the orange economy. So this is talking about the creative arts. When I look at music and how our music has impacted the world, when I look at sports, which is entertainment, when I look at film, you look at Bob Marley, for example, we couldn't go on and on and on and name these people out of the Caribbean, Rihanna and so on. Why don't we have a Caribbean-based record label for our music? Why are we not shooting more films in the Caribbean and telling our stories to the world as well, and allowing them to come there and tell their stories easier? So the sound stages that they can shoot at and not just use us for exterior shots, right? You bring James Bond to Jamaica. Every James Bond book was written in Jamaica. Why wasn't every film done there? We had 4 films that I've shot there, though. But they didn't do most of the interior scenes. They do exterior scenes. Pirates of the Caribbean, not shot in Jamaica, but shot in some other islands. That, again, tells you.
So that's Jamaica.
So to me, big opportunity in film, right? And film is actually a property, is intellectual property. Life of the creator plus 50 years, 70 years, 90 years, depending on where it's registered, Jamaica or the US, elsewhere. So that's you own something that make it once and it earns money for the rest of your life. Walt Disney being the best example of that. Why have we not seen that backed? Well, it was backed for a little bit. We saw Dancehall Queen and Third World Cup being done in Jamaica. We had years before that Holiday Come, Lunatic and so on. So you look at Palm Pictures and what Chris Blackwell did, tried for a minute, but then nobody else wanted to jump in and support that. That is the key. We have people who have money who have decided that they don't want to take risks. They don't like that music, or they don't like the people that make that music, right? It's ghetto music. I don't like dancehall, or back then, don't like reggae music. We don't like Rasta. We don't like soca. You can't play calypso in my house. I don't like carnival, right? There are people with the money who decide that they are not going to back those things and are not going to take the risk. Those who have taking the risk, I've met with them, and what they've said is that when they give the money to the creatives, they don't get good reporting. It's not a proper company structure. They don't know how the money was used. They don't know what money was made. So it needs to be operated as a business. It's the music business, the film business, the sports business. We keep forgetting the business part of it. That is where I think we can have the biggest impact. And when I go and have my daughter watch on Netflix one simple show, K-pop Demon Hunters, and I sit there and I say, look at what South Korea has done with their cultural exports, especially music, K-pop, then TV, their dramas and their films. What? Me shame. As a Caribbean person, me shame, because reggae music bigger than K-pop. It was bigger than K-pop, not anymore.
Yeah.
When I look at what reggaeton has done, using one beat from dancehall, it's bigger than dancehall now. Me shame. And there's a generation of us who are ashamed of that, who are going to change it. We are going to professionalize those industries. We are going to invest in those industries. We're going to support. And I'm very proud to say I've backed 3 films last year in 2025, and you're going to hear more about them. We own shares in a publicly traded film company, The Lab, in Jamaica. We're excited for what they're doing with Love Offside and the rest of their films. And I invested in Naomi Cowan's album last year, October, which then won, this year, it won the Juno Award for Best New Reggae Recording in Canada. So we have actually put our money where our mouth is and backed the orange economy, and now we need to do it at scale, and that will happen for sure.
Awesome. So the next one, you kind of touched on this earlier. Why not make the investment firm focus on Miami or the U.S.? What made you want to make a Caribbean-focused firm?
I don't want anybody to have to get up and leave the Caribbean to achieve the dreams that I have focused on. I need to make sure that the place is better than I left it. So there should be a child in school right now, in primary school or prep school, that has a vision for what they want to achieve in their life, and I don't want them to feel like they have to go to University of Miami and then work in the United States for it to work. They should be able to stay right back at home. It should be the place to live, work, do business, and raise a family. So
Vision
that is
2030.
why Vision 2030. But at the end of the day, I don't feel welcome in the United States. I've never felt welcome here. I've been treated as an outsider, as an other, and I feel welcome at home. So I want to invest back home to ensure it's in a state where I can feel comfortable living down there. It has the things that I want. It's safe, it's clean, it's secure, it's efficient, transportation in place, right? I may as well be part of the solution, not part of the complaint.
Next, how has having a family impacted your ambition? Has it made you work harder or caused you to slow down and enjoy life more?
It has made me work smarter, not harder or not slow down, work smarter. I'm more intentional. I focus on being more efficient, and I get to involve the children. Just yesterday, Liam, our middle one, was saying, he wanted a tripod. We got the tripod. They do film in there as one of their electives, the theater film, Luke and Liam. So they have learned how to shoot and edit videos. They do stop motion. So I pay them $15 per video they help me to shoot for Blue Mahoe. They're very excited to shoot some more videos this summer because they knew a big announcement was coming. So we have a green screen set up here in our living room. We have another black screen. We have 2 lights here. We bought a new tripod. We have the little film slate. They're working on a storyboard today. Our 8-year-old daughter is like, well, I want to do something. So I bought her a hand puppet made out of Germany. It's called Spike. She came up with a voice for him, and we're shooting financial literacy videos for kids. And I post them on social media, and I pay her per 1,000 views that the videos end up getting. So I've gotten to involve them in what I'm doing. They have read about Warren Buffett. They learn about investing. So they now understand, what does daddy do for work? They get to say that, but they don't get to be a part of the work. My wife, who trained as a graphic designer, is an art teacher in middle school. She designed the first website, the first logo for the company, and my business card. The business card I still use to this day is designed by my wife. And I love when I give it to somebody and they say, man, This card is incredible. I don't even want to write on it. I don't want to lose it. Who did this? And I said, oh, my wife designed it. Wow, I need to talk to her. Maybe she can design one for me. Involve them. So I've learned to work smarter. But it has also forced me to slow down. There's a time and place for everything, is what Dad said. I have to learn to put my phone on silent or turn it off when we just go to Disney World and just enjoy our time together. I can't be stepping off the ride to take a call. Let's just actually be present. So having a family, more than just having a wife, having a family has taught me to be present.
Next, as a founder, how critical is it to validate your dream before asking for investors? Or can a presentation pitch be enough to get capital and build a business?
You'll be surprised, just the pitch alone can be enough to build a business. It's rare, but a pitch in the right room at the right time, that's what matters. If it's too early, it doesn't matter how great your pitch is and what your background is. Wrong time, no money. Right time, decent idea, good team can get money, right? But you have to be in the right place at the right time, as people say, which means you need to get into every room, because you actually don't know what is the right room when, and they say you don't always know when is the right time. But yeah, the right pitch at the right time in the right room can actually get you money and then you launch. In most cases, though, you do need to validate. You need to raise money from the 3 Fs, friends, family, and fools. And if you are the one putting in the money and you're not a friend and you're not a family, then you are the fool. Let's just be honest. But you raise money from the 3 Fs and you get traction.
So everybody, that was David P.A. Mullings of Blue Mahoe Capital. So my 3 takeaways before I go. 1, the plan matters. David wrote down a 15-year vision at 15 years old in Kingston, not because he knew exactly what would happen, but because he knew the direction he was heading. Caribbean founders who build with clarity about where they are going, even when the path changes, outlast the ones who are figuring out as they go. Number 2, failure is not the opposite of the build. It is part of it. David failed at multiple ventures before Blue Mahoe. COVID wiped out years of progress, but he built anyway. The Caribbean founder economy does not need more people who have never failed. It needs more people who failed and keep going. And number 3, diaspora capital is the most underutilized resource in the Caribbean. They already exist. The people who care about the region already exist. Blue Mahoe Capital is building the vehicle to connect them. Pay attention to that model, because what David is building is bigger than one firm. And that's the build for this week. If this conversation moved you, share it with a founder who needs to hear it. Leave a review. It helps more Caribbean stories reach more people. And if you're not already subscribed to the Founderpreneur Weekly or Thursday newsletter covering the Caribbean founder economy, the link is in the show notes below. I'm Stephen Stanbury. Until next week, keep building.